Hello and good evening. Good evening. My name is Georgette McLeod, and you're listening to the Candidates Forum for the Klondike Electoral Riding on CFYT 106.9 FM. We are broadcasting and streaming live tonight from Dawson City on the traditional territory of the Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in. I am joined by the three candidates for the Klondike, and during the program, I'm going to ask each candidate to respond in under 3 minutes to questions about matters facing the constituents in this riding. Thank you all for being here this evening and for putting your name forward in the Klondike riding. The questions tonight are based on emails the organizers of tonight's event received from the constituents. I would like to thank Kevin Barnes from CFYT and Frederic Conradi, Georgia Hammond, and Alex Somerville for their work organizing tonight's forum. The questions have been edited for the radio format, but the candidates have seen the original and unedited submissions that went into forming tonight's questions. So to start the forum, I invite each candidate to take 3 minutes to introduce themselves and have some opening remarks. So we'll start from this end. We'll start with Charlie.
Hello, my name is Charlie Dagostin. I'm a born and raised Klondiker. I grew up in Sunnydale, a little off-grid cabin with my family. I'm 26 and I currently reside in a little brown cabin behind Madame Tremblay's. My reason for wanting to put my name forward for the Yukon Party is I truly believe that I can be a positive voice for the Klondike and the people and really represent everyone who calls this beautiful place home. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll have Chris next for NDP.
Masicho. Yep, my name is Chris Clarke, and I'm the NDP candidate for a lovely riding here on the traditional territory of the Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in First Nation. I raised my family of 3 lovelies in this community, so I have an understanding of the challenges of doing so, and also am deeply appreciative of the generosity of this community in the many ways that our lives were enriched living here. There's so many good people, kind and resourceful, insightful, knowledgeable, creative people that are dedicated to improving and growing this place in so many unique and wonderful ways. And among other reasons, I'm putting my name forward for confidence in the leadership and just a strong sense that I have the skills and the mindset and the willingness to contribute to ushering in a new era of good governance and setting a sustainable course for the future of the territory. Merci.
Thank you. All right, next we will have Sandy Silver for the Liberal Party.
Thanks, Georgette. It is great to be here on the traditional territory of the Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in First Nation. I've been in this job for 9.5 years now, and it's been the honor of my life. I've seen a lot of things in the last 9.5 years, and I think the best part of the job is you really get an opportunity to listen to leaders in every corner of Klondike. The role of Premier has brought on a lot of challenges. The first 2 years, we were rookies in the job, creating collaborative governments, breaking down silos. It was a lot of work, and the people of Klondike really did lend me out to the rest of Yukon, and I really do appreciate that. It also has taken me away from this community, and I resent that. COVID on top of that, the job became national. We worked really hard to get vaccines in place for all of Yukon, and it's been a tough year. I think a lot of people are really fragile right now. We all have experienced a lot of mental health issues this year, and it's been tough. It's been really tough in a leadership role as well. But it really has been the honor of my life to work in this role, and my commitment to Klondikers. We're no longer rookies. We've broken down those barriers. We have a collaborative government We've worked really hard. The ministers are poised and ready to continue. And my commitment is to be more present in Klondike now that we've had that ability to do that hard work. If one thing we've learned from COVID as well is we can work more remote, which is fantastic. It means less trips to Ottawa. It means more work in the Klondike, and that's my commitment to Klondikers if I get the honor of continuing in this role. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we are going to move on to the questions. And I just want to remind all the candidates, just when you're not speaking, if you put your mask back on, please. Mussy. So we're going to move on to the questions, and you have seen these questions. And I'm going to give everyone a chance to start answering the questions. We'll rotate the questions as they're being asked. So the questions you can answer it. You have maximum of 2 minutes to answer, I should say. And if there is other candidates that have a response, please take 1 minute to answer that response after everyone has had the opportunity to speak. So, and that is a 1 minute max. So, and I don't think there's, all right, that's all I have to say. And we will continue with our first question. So I'm going to start with Chris and NDP. So the first question is, the current childcare facilities are unable to meet the demand with dozens of families waiting to place their children. Additionally, the daycares are overcrowded and understaffed. The lack of space means that parents who want to join the workforce are unable to. This problem is ongoing. What exactly is your childcare plan, and how will your plan alleviate the pressure on the daycare wait list?
Mussy, I meant to take the opportunity just to thank everybody who sent in questions. They were so thoughtful, and also everyone that I've met at the door. It's been a pretty steep learning curve. Hey, Charlie. Anyway, a huge amount of appreciation for those and the questions. So yeah, just trying to understand the pressures. So this is my response. Children are our future, and this goes without saying. So ensuring that children and their families have the support they need to grow and thrive is the cornerstone for the health and well-being of our community now and in the future. As the question states, there is a wait list for child services, and it is growing as our community is growing. We have hardworking, dedicated board members, staff, and directors at the facilities who have made it amply clear what their needs are. The Dawson Blue Daycare, for example, already has a city lot that is approved and designed, and a design for a much needed new facility to meet the existing 25 child wait list and the growing needs of our community. The NDP government will honor the decision and work closely with this organization and others in the community to ensure that public funding dollars are directed to meet these essential needs. The NDP government is also committed to maintaining the current universal childcare benefit structure for child providers and their families in place at the levels that were introduced before the election. But I do want to raise the flag, and I'll be doing this a few times, and no disrespect, but I was really shocked to learn that this new program, 30 seconds, was just given a very short window for the service providers to agree to and sign on to. And I really think that, you know, as you said, we're all experiencing a lot of stress. And I feel like we have to respect community organizations and their needs, and they need ample time to consider major changes to funding infrastructure going forward. So I'll leave it at that because I'm out of time. Is that right?
Mussy, thank
Okay.
you.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one that I'll answer is Sandy.
Thanks, Georgette. And thanks for the question. I want to congratulate Little Blue and Trinky So and the other 63 other childcare service providers in Yukon that have signed on to universal childcare as of April 1st. This has been a lot of work. We started with the Index of Wellbeing in August and started talking about the importance of getting more money into the hands of the professionals in these facilities. You know, going back my first year as premier, we did talk with the board at that time about a building. At that time, it was decided that they were happier with where they were as opposed to a new building. We then went and doubled or increased the direct operating grant, and we created with the Little Blue and also Watson Lake, the rural sustainability model. The new board wants to see a new building. We'll absolutely work with the new board and the city to do so. We've also put money in this budget for training for licensed daycare providers, which is really exciting as well. Those are the commitments that we've made. Again, this is extremely important that the money goes not only just towards people having the opportunity for early childhood education, but really that we're investing in this as a service. It's so important to invest in early childcare, licensed facilities. Every single dollar of our plan will go towards that endeavor. We need to work with Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in, with also Little Blue, and there'll probably be some private sector licensees as well, because this will be a pressure being put on this system. There's already waiting lists for Little Blue, so we will be creating more pressure because more people are going to want to utilize the service. It's a good problem to have $15 million extra money being put into the system, and we will work with our partners to make sure we can provide more space. And again, happy to work with Little Blue and the current board for a new location with the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Charlie.
Hi, thank you for the question. I totally agree with my counterparts here that our childcare services is at a great disadvantage where we just don't have the current spots to represent everyone who needs the space. Little Blue is a great example. This building is currently 41 years old and is leased from the local church. The Yukon Party is committed to trying to move forward to expand and work with Little Blue Daycare on a new space to affiliate or be able to accommodate all the kids that we are accepting into our community. This is all possible because the Yukon Party is reviewing the child care subsidy and ensure that it fits all new funding systems, and as well with our truly universal Child Care Act, where we will put $500 in the pockets of families each month for kids under 5. I think this is a great program because it doesn't just apply to people who currently have childcare spots. It applies to the whole public. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any follow-up responses? You have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, okay. It was noted that the childcare, like the universal childcare, was giving an additional subsidy to families but it was specifically for families who already had children in their spots, and so that really wasn't helping to address the really pressing and immediate need of families without child care services. And specifically it impacts women who are who can't afford to stay at home with their children. They need to return to the wage economy. Anyway, I just wanted to add that when we're making these decisions, that they're made in a sort of a thoughtful way, and that when programs are being unfurled, that they happen in a way that makes sense and that people are aware of and that they can adjust to and accommodate. So when I heard that, I thought, why is all this huge amount of money going into like a further subsidy and not supporting the families
Thank you.
that don't have kids in daycare?
Thank you for your response. Sandy?
Yeah, this is for anybody who wants to put their children in licensed facilities. We know that there's going to be a lack of licensed facility in the first few weeks and months, and we have money for training to address that problem. This isn't a decision that was made just during a campaign. We've worked very hard on this through the Index of Wellbeing, all of the stakeholders, about what is the best way to maximize the facilitation of increasing the amount of daycare provided for all people who want it, not just the ones who currently have it. With the Yukon Party's plan, you're not guaranteeing that you're going to maximize the amount of money that's going to go into licensed facilities. These people that run these facilities, they are professionals. We need to make sure that we maximize the dollars that go into the training and the care of early childhood learning, as opposed to into somebody's pocket, and it may or may not go into the system.
All right, thank you, Sandy. Did you have another response?
Good. Thank you.
You're good. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next question, number 2. And we are going to start with Sandy this time. So the question is, reports from the Auditor General in 2009 and 2019 found that more was needed to support children with special needs by the Department of Education. According to parents and the Yukon Right to Learn Coalition, better equipped individual education plans need to be put in place. If elected, what is your party going to do to be accountable to these members of our society and to ensure their needs are effectively addressed through IEPs, resources, and training?
Thanks for the question. I don't think there's been an Office of the Auditor General survey in the last 20 years that didn't have a scathing review. We do have to do a lot more for education. There was a lot of misunderstandings out there about the IEPs. Never was there an intention to take away IEPs. There's a modernization process and review going on right now, because that's what we need to continuously do, is make sure that the programs and services that we offer are being reviewed at all times. We have worked very closely with Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in in supporting programs. We know that we've increased the CELC programs working with Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in. We have worked with the Chiefs Council on Education, the Education Directorate for First Nations, and we are moving forward with a First Nations Board of Directors. We need to take a look at how we assess FTEs. I heard at the door that we're clawing back FTEs. That's not true. There's a 5-year rolling average when it comes to FTEs, and we have to plan based upon that now, which really isn't helpful to big schools, big rural schools, because once we get to September, we then know what our enrollment numbers are. This causes a lot of friction and a lot of consternation from the educational professionals in the rural communities. So I do want to review this process for the larger rural schools. It might be time for us to take a look at another model for communities that hit a certain threshold of a population. Robert Service School is bursting at the seams. We need to address that. And we also have to make sure that we continuously increase the special services that we provide through counselors and other supports. That has been increasing under our watch. I remember when I was in the classroom, there was 1 and then 1.5 CELCs. We have more trainers, more counselors now than before. I know that TH is looking for more as counselors as well. There's another position open, but we have to work we have to work together to make sure we address these issues.
All right, thank you. Next, we will have Charlie.
So this affects me quite personally, because I am someone who was going through the school system with an IEP, and I don't think I'd be able to graduate without one. So the fact that I started hearing that IEPs were being restructured really struck me as alarming, because I, like I said, personally would not be able to complete my school career without it. An IEP is a lifelong support that continues even after high school and into post-secondary, and I think it's a very crucial learning aspect. I can't imagine a school system without them. And to speak on the Auditor General's report, I am fully committed to working with the First Nations government and implementing all the recommendations put forward by the Auditor General's report. But I think to really improve education for our community, it's going to take a community to do it. So I look forward to working with school boards, First Nations, and all forms of government to try to complete that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we will have Chris.
All children have the right to learn. And as a government, we have a responsibility to ensure that every child is given the best chance to live a fulfilling, meaningful life for themselves. Teachers and children and parents are facing huge challenges in meeting the complex educational needs of school-aged children. The IEP program was one of the tools available that ensured resources for children in school with complex learning needs. And when a unilateral decision, I understood, was made to cut the program without reason or substitute for those needs and those rights, it was shocking, and it boggled my mind to think that it came from a government with a former teacher who was respected at the helm. The Auditor General report affirmed that we have been failing miserably in ensuring that our children are getting the support they need to succeed. The NDP government is committed to bolstering the resources and training teachers and supports needed to ensure that children are able to thrive, grow, and learn in an appropriate, supported environment. I think it's critical that students are assessed for support sooner, and so that they're not lagging on wait lists, which I've heard of, and continuing to be disadvantaged in the classroom. By increasing the number of staff who can provide educational assessments. Oh, we're doing this, sorry. I'm obviously reading parts of the platform and I'm a little bit embarrassed. But the NDP acknowledges that resourcing our education system in meaningful ways serves the community and the society in the long run. And students leaving the school system should be ready to serve and contribute in meaningful ways and feel hope and inspiration to explore and grow into adults, contributing to the well-being of our economy and our life here. So we invite you to look at the well-considered education platform to see the broader vision of education support as proposed by the NDP government.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the end of. So we have some follow-up responses. We'll start with Sandy.
Thank you very much, Georgette. I think it's pretty disingenuous for both parties to say that the IEP was going to be scrapped. There was never a plan to scrap it. And there's a review happening right now of the educational professionals of the BC curriculum. That is not a political wing decision. Again, what's happening with the IEP is an analysis to make sure that it's actually reaching the needs of our students. This process, led by professionals, not politicians, will make sure that the IEP system is better, not worse.
Is it still going to be a legally binding document that will ensure resources will be associated with those students who are identified with challenges?
Can I answer the questions? Yes.
So we have to give Charlie a chance to answer if he has any follow-up responses.
Okay,
Yes.
behave yourself.
It's not a question and answer. Then yes.
For me, my main concern, I think, was when I was starting to go door to door and realizing that people were being removed from IEP plans without consultation or notice. I think that's kind of a lack of communication from government at all levels. And that's my main concern with the whole process at the moment. Thank you.
And do you have a follow-up response?
Yeah, just to say the same thing. I think it's a communication crisis. I just wanted to affirm though, that the CELC funding that you referred to, I'm pretty sure that all of that comes from Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in, right? That's not Yukon government funding. So when you're talking about expanding resources, you're leaning to Tr'ondëk for providing those. I mean, obviously they provide and they're dedicated to ensuring wholesome, culturally appropriate education wherever, you know, and they contribute greatly to the school system. But I just wanted to confirm that when you're talking about expanding dollars and putting in more resources to the school, you seem to be leaning heavily on TH for that.
14 seconds to respond.
There's 3 levels of funding, whether it's Jordan's principal's money or the money that we gave to the First Nations Education Directorate, which was millions of dollars to get set up, and also through the First Nations Board of Education. Our goal is to...
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your response. So we're on to question 3. We're moving around our community in all facets of areas. So we're moving from the education system. Now we're moving into housing. So the next question is in regards to housing in the Klondike. And it has been long recognized as one of our most urgent needs. There is a high demand of rental units, and many constituents find themselves either priced out of home ownership due to the market and building costs, or simply unable to find a suitable home or land for purchase. As MLA, how would you ensure that constituents are able to find adequate and affordable housing to rent and purchase? We are going to start with Charlie this time, and you have 2 minutes.
This is another issue that affects me personally and a lot of people my age in this community. As someone who's actively trying to invest and really set roots here, I'm having a really hard time, as I'm sure most people are, is finding affordable housing and housing in general. A good example is just look at the Facebook buyer crier the community has. It is constantly being hit with people asking for rental housing. And the same thing's being heard at doors when I'm going knocking. I've talked to a couple families who said that they would love to invest and really be a part of this community, but just don't have the available room to do so. And I think that's very tragic. That also ties in a lot with the lack of childcare spacing. So I am committed with working the city of Dawson and TH government with finding and activating available land within the municipality that was, you know, in the past maybe reserved for industrial use. But I truly think it's time that we, start advocating for our community and for our region and start investing in our community to grow. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. We will have Chris next to answer the question.
Thanks. Yeah, housing. So we have developers. We have developers here in the Klondike Development Organization who've done and are very capable to support development of housing in the community. But in the Liberal government term, we haven't gained any new Yukon housing units or created a single new lot in 25 years. And as the government is the Crown landholder, and this is the means by which land can become available for development, we just need to act on it. There was a recent 2-year consultation in which all kinds of people were contributing to that process and identifying various housing needs, but mostly what came forward was just that anything at all would be good. Social housing, student housing, elder housing, and there's just been crickets. So the Corbeau site has been remediated and it's been available for some time. But what we really need is a government that will access to the land for development without further delay. And I'm committed to actioning land availability and partnerships and developing lots for housing. Certainly recognize the need that, well, everybody deserves a stable and affordable place to live in our community, and we can't put down roots and grow our community and have the kind of services that we need for our community for in education and mental health and medical health and all the professionals that all need homes, as well as anybody else who comes to the community for whatever desire they may have. So it's a key thing and we have to act on it. So I'm totally committed to that.
All right, thank you, Chris. And now we have Sandy to answer the question.
Thank you. I agree that we are definitely in a housing crisis, and I also agree that housing is a human right. The 30+ units that we've done in the last 3.5 years is not enough, and we need to do more. And we are on the precipice of an awful lot of change. Corbeau, ready to go. There's $40 million available through the new construction revitalization affordable housing that Minister Frost just received, which is great news for the Corbeau site. So that's ready to go. We have investments ready to go as well with the private sector. We've done this really cool thing where we put requests for proposals out to get the private sector to start developing lots, and we can do that right here in Dawson. I've already talked to contractors. We're going to get that moving this summer. We need to talk to the city about Slinky. We can move very quickly on that with a request for proposal, maybe, hopefully, but again, we need to talk to the city about that. The 17 or so lots in the north end are really close to coming out as well. We have the Canadian Yukon housing benefit for struggling Yukoners with rent. We have the Northern Carve Out. There's a lot of programming that is going to happen this summer. We're working with a placer miner right now up the valley to have a really nice swimming pool area and a residential lots out on that community. It's not just about in the municipality. We need to work with Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in. Those lots that are at C4, there's not enough pump storage for them to be developed overnight. Parks Canada wants to download some offices as well, and we're working with them as well. I've created a lot of partnerships with a lot of different governments. It's now time for me to be very, very present this summer to make sure we connect the dots, and that's my commitment to Dawsonites, that I will be here helping to coordinate those three. We've talked to KDO about being project managers. We have a lot of work to do this summer, but we will crack a big part of that, not just this summer, if I'm given the honor of continuing in this role.
All right, thank you. And we have 1 minute follow-up responses or additions or questions. So we'll go back to Charlie.
Yeah, I'd like to just bring up the Yukon Party is fully committed to bringing back housing programs that were currently eliminated by the government. These programs are home buyer programs and down payment assistance programs, which would greatly increase the ability of first-time home buyers and young people to start purchasing and investing in property around this community. I think it's a great initiative, and I think it's something that really we have to push forward as we continue to grow. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, Chris, do you have any follow-up?
Yeah, sure. Just to share again a couple of the NDP commitment and platforms. to build 25 new units with Yukon Housing, create more affordable housing units for seniors. And I think really critically also we have to recognize that the need for a cap on rent so that people aren't at the mercy of whatever profit that a landholder may choose to have. So I think that's a really important thing to bring up, that the NDP will champion among other affordable units and freeing up lots. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And Sandy.
Thank you. We didn't eliminate programs. We shifted a focus. We went from one size fits all for all rural communities to a Yukon housing model that is community oriented. It's affordable housing, it's social housing, but it's also community housing. We also announced in our budget as well for this year, increase in staff housing in rural communities as well. And that is going to be for government jobs in rural communities as well. Too often I've heard people in Klondike who apply for jobs and then they get the job, but then they're told they have to move to Whitehorse and say, no, I don't want to move to Whitehorse. So we're changing that as well to make sure that we have staff housing available for folks here in the rural communities, but also increasing the availability of government jobs in the rural communities as well.
All right, thank you. So now we are moving on to question number 4. And we are going to start this round of questions with Chris. So the question is, a recent feasibility study for a recreation center for Dawson City found a new facility would cost between $50 to $80 million. Will you commit to building a new recreation facility for our community? If yes, how much money is your party committing to this project? So we are starting out with Chris.
So the new recreation facility has been envisioned by the community for many years, even probably not that long after the ill-fated rec center that we now are looking to decommission. In a November letter from the Minister of Community Services, the city was informed it would be offered $25 million for the replacement of the facility and no more. And so as the assessment for a new facility is between $50 and $80 million, it falls quite short of what the vision is for the community. But I understand that the application for this facility is through the federal infrastructure funding. So if I'm elected as your MLA, I'm committed to applying to that fund, that federal fund, to meet the needs of the community for a modern recreational facility that will meet the needs of the community long into the future. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Now it'll be Sandy's turn.
Thank you. So ISIP funding is not only just federal funding, it's a 25-75 split between our government and the federal government. There's also a savings account that the municipality has put in as well. But the long and the short of it is we have already committed in our 5-year capital plan to this facility. The Yukon Party took 2 different elections to do 2 different sod turning ceremonies to give us nothing. When we first came in, there was no planning done, 0, not one piece. So we started from scratch. We said we would work with the city, and the city is in charge of this, and they're going around and talking with stakeholders, with people that want a facility, and we will work with them. It's in our 5-year capital plan already. Choosing another government at this point, who knows what would happen with that rec center, but we've already committed to it. We've already seen costs increase because of COVID. The supply chain management has been disrupted internationally. We've made a commitment. The ISIP funding is oversubscribed, but Dawson City Rec Center is already in that. So our commitment is solid, and it's already been, it's already in the plan. There's more money budgeted than what the NDP just said as far as a commitment and a limit. So there's already more money in the budget than that. So that's not necessarily the case, but we will continue to work with the city to make sure that we have this facility because it's overdue.
All right, thank you. And we will finish the question with Charlie.
As someone who found a lot of success in recreation throughout most of my life, I completely understand the need for outlets for our community to have this rec center. For me, it's too early to say if a $50 to $80 million project is financially viable for this community. I think there's a lot of places where money can be spent in more efficient ways. That being said, I would really like to start working with the municipality of Dawson to address our rec issues and picking it off one step at a time. I don't think investing this large of an infrastructure all at one time is economically sound for the situation that we are in at the moment. I would like to start a building that has room to grow and room to progress as our community progresses. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. And we have follow-up response, Chris?
I just wanted a clarifying question. So the application to the IPCA fund has already gone in or not?
ICIP.
ICIP. Acronyms
It is
Anonymous.
already on the, I don't know if this is the right format. If you want to use your time and then I can respond. Yeah. Are you done with your time?
Yeah, no, I just wanted, it was a clarifying question. You had said that,
Yes.
and that there is like a limit on the amount of funding that you can apply for?
No.
Okay.
So ICIP funding is.
So this is, sorry,
Yeah.
this is Sandy's response now?
Okay.
Yeah, ICIP funding is the Invest Canada Infrastructure Program. It's hundreds of millions of dollars over a set time frame, and it is investing in community infrastructure from Old Crow to Watson Lake. There's other pockets of federal funding as well. There's Arctic Energy money, which bizarrely is where we're getting the money for the permanent solution to the portables at the Robert Service School of $4 million. And that flexibility changed overnight very quickly. And we're committed to working with the school community with that money. ICIP funding for the rec center is where we are currently using funding for the rec center facility. But again, there's going to be another federal budget coming, which will be a lot more money. There's always different pockets of federal money, but we've managed to get 75-25 cent splits, which is very good for our community.
Thanks for the clarifying.
All right, thank you. Okay, so here we go. We're moving to another area to discuss, to answer the question about, it's number 5 we're on. The question is, the Dawson Regional Planning Commission has indicated that in the next couple of months, they will start public engagement for their draft land use plan. Public engagement is key to the process and will be critical to the preparation of the Commission's recommended land use plan. Will your government honor the land use planning process and accept the recommendations that come out of the Dawson Regional Planning Commission's land use plan? And we are starting with Sandy first on this question.
Thank you very much for the question, Georgette. We've already put out an OIC to protect lands in advance of the draft of 17% of the area. Once that draft plan is out, there will be a moratorium put in place immediately for all the conservation lands in the process. That's something that the previous government didn't do and caused an awful lot of consternation and a Supreme Court decision therein. There was some critical steps that were missed by that previous government, and we will continue on the plan process. But again, we're making good on a commitment to, as of the draft plan, putting in the moratorium right away. And we want to see the draft plan turn into a final plan as soon as possible. We've been working in good faith with Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in, and I want to say thank you to the technicians who have been doing an extraordinary job, and also the individual board members as well. We have no desire to slow down this process. We want to get from the draft plan to the final as soon as possible. We want to start land use planning in multiple areas if the First Nations governments in those areas are ready, willing, and able to do so.
All right, thank you. And now we will move to Charlie.
I truly believe the development of a Dawson Regional Planning Commission is key to the future of the Klondike. That being said, I believe there's a huge difference between public engagement and meaningful public engagement. As someone who was interested in listening to the last public meeting, I was sad to hear that it was being broadcasted from 9 to 12 on a weekday. Unfortunately, I had to work and couldn't get the time off to go to that meeting. So I think if you say the words public engagement, to me, that means it actually is able to engage everyone who's being affected by it in the public. Especially because the board is not an elected board, I think it's more crucial than ever to really be able to involve everyone in this planning process and give a voice to everyone who will be affected by the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. And now Chris.
Of course, we will respect the decision of the Land Use Planning Commission. The land use planning is an integral part of the umbrella final agreement and therefore a treaty obligation. It is our responsibility to honor that plan, honor the plan that is put forward by the Commission after it has respectfully gathered and weighed the interests, knowledge, and values on the land. The commission has to be trusted and the process has to be trusted to present a balanced approach to guide us into the future. So there has been shortcomings, I feel, in the public engagement, but what the question refers to is whether when the recommended plan comes out from the commission, after all the public input and consultation and value and the weighing of all the values, after that happens, then the commission makes a recommended plan. And then the question is, will your government accept the recommendations that the commission, which is an independent body, makes to the government? So in the past, we've had failures with this regard. And so when the Peel plan, the Yukon party derailed that process they took the recommended plan and they changed it entirely. And then they brought it back to the community and said, here's our recommended plan. Do you like it? And we're like, that doesn't look anything like what we've been talking about up to now. We ended up in court, lengthy, costly, publicly funded court case. It cost.
Seems like she gets 5 minutes to speak.
And it was due process that was stepped aside. Regardless of what is being said here tonight, I do not have faith that the Liberal Party will uphold the recommendations of the Commission because, anyway, the Liberal government did accept the final recommended plan of the Peel and they're working to implement it, but they are also being taken to court by Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in and Carcross Tagish First Nation for failing to act in honesty and in good faith for approving a major project in the middle of the Beaver River watershed planning process.
Thank you, Chris.
And this is
respond to that.
unacceptable.
Your
And
answer
I
is finished now?
yeah,
Thank you.
But yeah, 5 seconds.
All right. So
a
we are
disgrace.
going to move on to,
To
Sandy.
to compare the extension of a permit for a mining company to the Supreme Court decision of the umbrella final agreement from the Yukon Party, that's very misleading for the NDP to state. Our track record when it comes to working with First Nations governments, I'll stand up to my record any day. We made, the NDP have said the same thing with Yukon Party, with the Liberals about fracking, that we would be fracking, and we didn't. They keep on saying these large statements, and they're just not true. What we will do is respect the process. The draft plan will come out, and then there will be public consultation. It's nice to know that the NDP will go ahead without that public consultation.
all right. Charlie, do you have a follow-up response?
I would just like to clarify that I would completely support any decision the Plan Use Commission came to. I just really have an issue with the way that they are engaging with the public. I think they could do a better job with open communication and involving everyone who will be affected by this plan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Chris, do you have a minute follow-up?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that you believe that you've acted with due respect. I would question whether the OIC that came forward for the Dawson region was consistent with the recommendations of the Commission for protected areas. And regardless of, I wasn't comparing it to the Peel. I'm just saying that you are in court with these governments for a lack of good faith in respecting the rights of First Nation governments to co-manage and have a say in the co-management of their lands.
Great, thank you. So we are continuing to move on to the next question, which is, we're on question 6 now. And this question is about mental illness and addiction. So mental illness and addiction are healthcare emergencies that have negative impacts on the well-being of community members and their families. Demand for treatment and support of these issues is currently not being sufficiently met within the community. How do you propose improving and expanding mental health and addiction services in Dawson? And we are starting this question with Charlie.
The issue of mental health, illness, and addiction affects all sectors of the community, no matter their social economic means. I think it is a crucial part that we are able to support our people at any aspect. And the evidence has shown by ensuring people have their needs met with housing, food, and employment that we can really help to promote a healthy community. Many rural communities struggle with attracting and maintaining professionals. This stems from a lack of housing. I think by increasing our or encouraging our local population to seek careers in health and social backgrounds, that we can start bringing this professionalism back to our community and supporting our community that way. The Yukon Party is committed to increasing the incentives for reducing barriers to allow local peoples to serve our communities in those manners. I think that's a huge step forward with really taking care of our people in our home. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Charlie. So we will go to Chris next.
Thanks. We appreciate very much what has been done to remove the stigma from mental health challenges and from seeking help. Unfortunately, much less has been done to improve access to services, and people in community are struggling with anxiety, depression, suicidation, and addictions of all variety, and there isn't enough support there to see through these challenging times, which is contributing to a sense of hopelessness and despair. We finally have a full-time mental health nurse, but with only one psychiatrist in the territory and one mental health support worker in the community, there is an incredible strain on the mental health workers themselves, as well as school and other support staff in the community who are not fully equipped or have the time or skills to provide the level of support that's needed. The situation is unsustainable, and additional resources need to be applied. The NDP is prioritizing the recruitment and retention of resident youth child psychologists to provide that professional and quality care needed for youth and children in territory to fill this very serious gap. NDP will work in cooperation with NGOs and First Nations to provide the development of a peer-led intervention service for youth in crisis, which has had huge success in other places. And just to say that our community is only as strong as the weakest link, and mental health and well-being of our family and the well-being of our family members is dependent on good care. Thanks. Oh, did I get my last one? No. Oh, I have 30 seconds. Not only
29.
So an expansion of mental health services is necessary for those in need, and their provisions speak to the care and well-being of the community as a whole. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so we will have Sandy.
Thanks, Georgette. We've come a long way with mental wellness and addictions, and we have to go so much further. Previous to us coming into to government, there was 2 mental wellness nurses for all rural Yukon communities under the Yukon Party. We've switched that around to 4 mental wellness hubs and 22 professional support staff in those 4 communities. Right now, I'm hosting with the other premiers. Yukon is leading with the other premiers a podcast called Promising Practices. On a national basis, we're looking at best practices for rural, remote, Indigenous communities to see best practices across Canada. What we want to do with these 2, with this is go to the federal government. We need more federal support. But what we need to do right away, and after the election, I'm going to commit to this, is we need to talk to the people that are on the front lines right now. There's some incredible workers in these 4 community hubs. Please listen to the Promising Practices podcast. You'll hear directly from them. They'll tell you how far we've gone, but how stressed they are right now and how much support they need. This is extremely important to me, and it's one of my #1 priorities. Nobody has been unaffected by mental health issues because of COVID. We're all very fragile right now. We need to show the support of the individuals that are on the front line. But to say that we haven't come a long way in the last 3.5, 4 years is not true. We've done an awful lot of work. We need to continue on that practice. We have $70 million in the current budget for mental wellness, addictions, and support. And we want to continue there. I believe that this national podcast is really going to help us look at best practices right across the nation. And we're going to come together as premiers to continue that work, put some pressure on the federal government to increase the funding and supports therein for mental wellness. But the most important thing we can do is listen to the people in the front line now, because they will give us the best ideas of what we need to do to continue this work.
Thank you. And now we will have the 1-minute follow-up response, and we'll go back to Charlie. If you have anything? No? Okay. And so then if Chris, do you have anything that you would like to follow up on?
No, I definitely wanted to acknowledge the work that the Liberal government has done to date, absolutely. Yep. But there definitely needs to be more
Yep.
resources applied and training also, and also creative response to like the peer support idea. There's lots of really good ideas out there that are less like capital intensive, but I did want to acknowledge that. And
All right, thank you. And Sandy?
Thank you. Thanks for the acknowledgement. And there is a lot more work to be done. Yeah.
Okay. We will move on to question number 7. And this has to do with waste management. So the question is, there are many ways we can manage waste better in Dawson. We need proper composting facilities, reuse piles for construction materials, efficient incinerators, better dedicated waste diversion centers, and legislated accountability for polluters and major waste producers. How will you move forward on these initiatives to help us build a new facility to acquire proper equipment and to help better our waste reduction and diversion? And we will have 2 minutes, and we'll start with Chris.
Waste diversion is a municipal responsibility, but the territorial government has a role to play in funding capital projects such as a waste diversion facility. In learning about this issue this week, I was struck by a few things, like absolutely the role and dedication of the nonprofit society CKS in advancing on a largely voluntary basis the need for waste diversion and waste reduction education. And the city, and from what I understand, so I just wanted to put my hands up because they have done so much work in the community for very little money in exchange. The city is a partner with them, and they have been trying to work with YG to see the waste diversion site, which is shovel ready. They are waiting for it to be funded. But the relationship, I understand, has floundered, and as such, the city has chosen to fly solo and has assigned $1.8 million in its next budget to ensure this critical waste reduction infrastructure is built. So that was a disappointment. The city tries to effectively and responsibly manage stuff that goes into the landfill and the stuff we want to keep out, and at present, YG is not adequately funding waste management. Recognize the CKS facility in town is bursting at the seams, and we want to support the city's plan to build their waste diversion facility on Rabbit Creek Road, and I'll do anything I can to help them with that.
All right, thank you, Chris. Now we will have Sandy.
Yeah, there's definitely a coordination of efforts between the community, the city of Dawson, and also local solutions to local problems. And the municipality is in charge to set those priorities. And you know, this has been taking too long, and we will definitely admit that. There's been a lot of conversations Yukon-wide about polluter pay, and we really have been changing the model when it comes to recycling and when it comes to our land facilities. It's a contentious conversation, and we've been trying to push the needle as far as we can. The good news here when it comes to CKS and when it comes to working with the municipality is the feds have increased the gas tax money to municipalities. They just made that announcement. And so that's probably where the money will come from. But again, this will be a city of Whitehorse, our city of Dawson decision. We will continue to work with them hand in glove though. This is extremely important. Pre-service responsibility, waste oil, containers, the hazardous household waste, the packaging. I think CKS has done an extremely good job. They've been struggling with their bailers, and they're doing extremely important work, and we need to up our game, and we need to commit to CKS to do more for them, and we will.
All right, thank you. Do we have follow-up response at all, Charlie?
Can I just answer it?
Yes. You have 1 minute.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he didn't answer the first time yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're too quiet over here.
Yeah, you do. And I haven't checked you off yet. So yes, you deserve your 2 minutes. Please
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
So growing up in the Klondike, I have lots of memories of going to our local dump and going to the free store. And I'm sure, Chris, you've taken your family there as well. So the idea of reuse and recycle is not new to this area. I strongly believe by investing and communicating with our local organizations, like the Klondike, Conservation Klondike, we can come to new and exciting solutions to our waste management issues. I think working with the public is key to resolving all of these facts. The Yukon Yukon Party is committed to reviewing the solid waste agreement with Dawson and finding real solutions for waste management within the Klondike area. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Charlie. And any follow-up responses, Chris?
No, I think I'll pass.
All right, thank you. And Sandy, you're good? All right, so we're ready to move on to the next question then. So we're on question 8, and we're moving right along here. We're getting through these questions, and I know that we have these pre-formed, but I don't know if there would be any others if there is time. Yes, okay. So there is more questions after these 12 that you may have an opportunity to answer. So we do have until 8 o'clock. So the next question is there is a growing demand for local food and a growing number of producers stepping up to feed the Klondike. How will you work to grow local agriculture and ensure food security and support local farmers as our Klondike MLA? So we start this question with Sandy.
Thank you very much, Georgette. This is a great question. I think one thing about COVID, and as we go from relief into recovery, there's certain things that we shouldn't go back to. And, you know, the way that we feed the nation is always top of mind. We need to focus more on local production. We need to put more incentives into businesses and grocery stores into promoting and selling more local products. This is extremely important. And I know, you know, as we've seen supply chain management issues in the past with, you know, highways being out of commission, this is a serious issue. And, you know, you only have to look at the gold rush to know that Yukon and Dawson back in the day was self-sufficient. And we have amazing farmers. The agricultural community is growing. We have introduced an agricultural policy that will guide us through the next 10 years that does focus in on exactly this. This is about celebrating local farmers, local producers, and also recognizing the good work of First Nations as well. I was very humbled to be able to nominate the Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in for the Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in Farm for the Arctic Inspiration Prize, which won $1 million. Talking to the team out there about the new greenhouse for year-round production, and also just the quality of product that is being produced already by local farmers. We have a strategy already. I urge people to go online and take a look at the agricultural policy that we have developed for the next 10 years. This is extremely important, and it's something that I know as I go door to door, not only in this community, but right across Yukon, this is something that people will support. It's about healthy products. It's about less preservatives. And you know, one has to only just look at Bonton here in town to see an amazing business that fully utilizes nothing but local produce. And so we need to up that game Yukon-wide, and there's other great facilities that are doing that right across the Yukon.
Just in time. Thank you. And now we have Charlie to answer the question.
As a community, we need to look at growing and supporting our local agriculture. Just from my short time being on the campaign trail and getting out to meet all our local producers, it makes me overwhelmingly proud to see the hard work these people are doing. The persistence and passion of our local food providers really speaks to the culture of the Klondike, I think. And I think as we continue to grow and continue to support our agriculture industry, we will find less reliance on highway transportation. We can stop bringing food in from outside and start supplying our grocery stores and our farmers market with locally grown product. The Yukon Party and I are fully committed to working with local farmers to develop policies that are realistically and properly represent the local food producers. They need to be able to grow and operate their businesses. Partnering with First Nations as well is going to be a massive, massive benefit because they are already doing such great work at TH Farm. And I think we just have to continue pushing forward and really try and push for a self-sufficient community. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And then we have Chris to answer the question.
Food security has been on my mind for many years, and I've supported that conversation and the whole idea for some time. It all came out of the Climate Change Action Plan many moons ago. And needless to say, really respect the farmers and the growers and all the people who put in all the sweat and labor to provide food for us and increase our resilience living here so far. And on account of, well, we've become so dependent on food from outside that it is like such an important thing to return to. And so NDP government is very committed to supporting local farmers. And they have proposed in their strategy support to enable people to purchase, support a grant for farmers so that people can produce or purchase food at equivalent prices, which makes it more accessible. But what I also heard on the campaign trail, and just like leaning into your Bonton, what a wonderful job they're doing, and they are, but there's some decisions that are being made, like for example, on the creamery, Klondike Creamery, are really negatively impacted by a decision that's been made with respect to destroying animals because of a disease. But the overarching message that I got from a number of farmers is just that not listening was the government not listening to the farmers. And so what I heard is a really strong need to support the agriculture and the Klondike Farmers Association, because they have a sense of exactly what they need, and we want to resource them to do that.
Great.
And a big thing they could do is fund a position that would provide synergy.
Follow up in your 1 minute.
Oh, right. Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we have Sandy for 1 minute follow up.
Yeah, I just want to continue on the work that we have been doing supporting agriculture and supporting our farmers. Since 2018, with the Agricultural Partnership, we've supported over 337 different projects that are geared towards individual agricultural projects, things like community gardens and markets, funding for farming business plans, business expansions in the area, such as butcheries and ag production as well. So we'll continue that commitment. If there's an issue with a particular farm, then, again, we'll make sure that, we want to make sure that the farmers are providing the best possible product, but also there are regulations we have to work within as well. So, yeah.
All right, thanks. And Charlie, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'd just like to expand on Chris's comment there, lack of communication from current government. As well, talking to farmers, it does seem, and most, not even farmers, but most kind of labor positions where policies are being affected from the top down, there is a lack of communication from the people with boots on the ground to the people making these rules. And I think to really resolve that issue, we have to open up strong communication lines with the farmers and with the people who know what they're doing on the ground to really establish policy that can benefit everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Chris, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just wanted to concur with you on that, Charlie. Just like, it's so important to listen to community members at large. There's, they have the insight and the experience and the wisdom, and they are the ones that we should be taking the lead from on these. Like, yeah, so one of the suggestions from the Klondike Farmers Association was what they need is a staff person to be able to coordinate excess produce so that it can be distributed to community very readily. And regardless, they're the leaders, and so it's more about listening and responding. And same for the farmers who are struggling for lack of communication or miscommunication from the government on a number of fronts.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're ready to move on to question number 9. The question is, what do you see as the future of mining in the Klondike? Do you think the current regulations and royalty policies are adequate? If not, how do you think they could be improved? And we start this question with Charlie.
You know, growing up in Dawson, the role that miners play in our community is so crucial, like from supporting our economy to employing many citizens. I can't really picture Klondike without our mining industry. That being said, I think we do have to relook and kind of establish up-to-date regulations revolving around the mining industry. I think for the most part, building strong communications between placer miners in our area and governments, First Nations governments, is a good step forward to kind of developing a realistic industrial strategy that can allow the industry to move forward at a respectable and renewable way while still meeting the environmental needs of the population. I think that, again, it's all going to stem from strong communication and really bringing everyone to the table to sit down and have a discussion. We're all from the same community. We all want what's best for this community. And that's the way I would really like to approach that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Charlie. And we will have Chris next.
Thank you. I agree with Charlie that we are in this together as a community, and we definitely need to sit down and talk these things through. We're not going to get anywhere if we are in separate rooms and arrangements or whatever being made without a significant number of representatives of the community in the room at the same time. That said, I want to raise the fact that mining the Klondike has become a contentious and thorny matter that has resulted directly from Liberal and previous governments' inaction and sidestepping of due process. Legislation is the tool for guiding and managing sustainable mineral development, and it is the territorial government in partnership with First Nation governments that will bring have the responsibility to bring that legislation forward. The incumbent leader of the Liberal Party spoke passionately about the need for modernizing our archaic mining and courts acts. Not only is this mining legislation, it's old, it's sorely outdated, but both the federal and the territorial government committed to, as part of the devolution transfer agreement in 2001, to make all legislation in line with the umbrella final agreement. So that was a commitment that we made in 2001, and that legislation still has not been brought in line with the umbrella final agreement. That is a responsibility of the government. So when, in the last term, the Liberal government, rather than going forward to draft the legislation to bring it up to date, which is long overdue, they spent heaps of public money engaging the community on mineral development strategy. Industry, Angos, First Nations, we all weighed in on a process that simply was a long-winded way of avoiding your responsibility. And it was a colossal waste of time,
Thank you.
effort, and public-private
Your 2
sector
minutes are
dollars.
finished, Chris. Thank you. All right, and we will move on to Sandy now.
That colossal waste of time, according to the NDP, was mandated by an MOU written by all the First Nations government and this government. I think that's an alarming statement to say that that was a waste of time. To go back in time, there was litigation. That litigation was put in abeyance because we made a commitment to the First Nations governments to work with them. We signed an MOU, and we thank industry for waiting the 2 years for us to work with the First Nations on that MOU. It spawned the Mineral Development Strategy, which was a strategy where First Nations governments agreed upon. And it's nice to know the NDP think it was a waste of time. It came up with a lot of recommendations, and from those recommendations, we will move forward on successor legislation. We will move forward on the questions about royalties, placer royalties, and this was a lot of work. A lot of work to get ourselves to a place where we can make a move to modernize the legislation on both quartz and placer royalties. We've already changed the structure with quartz royalties for First Nations. The last government argued with the First Nations over their share. We said, we're not going to argue. We're going to give you what you're asking for on that. We're now moving forward on successor legislation for mining. For the record, all three parties have committed to successor legislation on mining. So just so folks know that that as well. Also, we are in the process right now of land successor legislation. It was First Nations governments who told us they wanted us to do that first. We now are in a place where we can do both. So to say that we haven't done much or that this is a colossal waste of time, that's extremely alarming.
All right, thank you, Sandy. And we'll have, since I am the moderator, I have the power to change time.
Cool.
So we can increase follow-up questions to 2 minutes since we do have time, since we are on our 9th out of 12 questions for this session. So I can give you a bit more time to be able to discuss any responses that you have or answer to any of the questions that come up from each of the candidates. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Can't
All right,
argue with you.
Since I'm the controller of the timer, I can increase this time to 2 minutes, if that's all right with everyone. Okay, so we have follow-up responses for 2 minutes. And it's your turn, Charlie.
Yeah. So speaking with lots of placer miners, they are really concerned about their future and their ability to operate their small businesses and feed their families. The Yukon Party is fully committed to working with YESEB and the Water Board to set more realistic timelines. We are committed to the Dawson Regional Land Use Planning process, and we are committed to the Yukon Wetlands Policy. We just need to involve everyone who's being affected. And I feel like we truly need to commit to the umbrella agreement and respect the umbrella agreement fully, but we have to maintain a public engagement that is accessible to everyone. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Charlie. So this is your follow-up response, and it's 2 minutes. And Chris, it's your turn.
Okay, so the way I understand it is that it's the government's responsibility to develop regulations and legislation. And then once they've drafted them, then they bring those back to the community and the industry. From what I understand, the industry has always been very clear about what their objectives are and what their needs are. They want to know where they can and they can't mine. They want a process that is easy to understand and a reasonable turnaround time. That is totally acceptable and doable and achievable. First Nations, from what I understand, and other people who have interests and want to ensure that we have that our land and our waters are healthy for future generations. And so that whatever mining, whatever extraction, or whatever disruption to the land that happens, we do not undermine the values of a healthy land that we all depend on for survival. And furthermore, those are obligations that we have to maintain. It's what we committed to, and it's for the benefit of all of us. I say personally that I felt like the mineral development strategy was just a really long way around of getting to the fact that we still need to draft legislation and then we bring it to industry. So I stand on that, and I'm 100% committed to advancing the draft of modern legislation and supporting the recommendations of the Dawson Regional Land Use Plan. Because like you said, Charlie, it's the two of those pieces together that will determine the future of mining. And we can have a healthy mining industry. And there's so many committed good miners who are respectable and meet the highest standards and contribute and are excellent community people as well. So I don't dismiss that, but there's improvements must be made. We can't afford to let the matter remain contentious. Oh, I didn't know.
Your 2 minutes, I ended up hitting the button a second before you finished, so my apologies. And so Sandy has follow-up for 2 minutes.
Thanks, Georgette. So interesting, from Yukon Party, we're hearing we need more engagement, and then from the NDP, this is a roundabout way to getting to that place. So that's what's happening is the mineral development strategy there's a draft out right now, and the consultation is happening with all stakeholders, and there'll be a final submission from that process. And I think it has been extremely comprehensive. It is also interesting, you know, we're at a place right now where the chiefs have signed a letter to the federal government asking for a 49-1 type of change to YESUP. Now, for the folks who don't remember S6, the Yukon Party did a 5-year review of the YESUP process, but failed to consult with the First Nations on a couple of amendments that set the mining industry back by about 10 years. Those amendments were not consulted upon, but talking to First Nations governments, it's one of the pieces that really does bog down the system. And so 49-1 is a type of system where if you're just going over to a kind of a redo or you know, extend your permits, and if nothing really has changed, well then this process shouldn't be the full process. And so to have the chiefs, after all of that issues, after all of that behind the back type of consultation or lack thereof, we have moved mountains in the last 4.5 years when it comes to those First Nations engagement. For them to be asking the federal government to re-engage on a YESA reset with our government, we have proven that we can work with First Nations governments and the mining community together.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to the next question. We can continue to have a 2-minute follow-up if needed. And so we have number 10. It is on climate change. Climate change remains a pressing concern. What kind of strategies do you advocate to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, to reduce emissions within a reasonable time frame, for example, by 2030, and to mitigate the existing impact of climate change on our communities? And this question, we begin with Chris.
I have nothing prepared. Climate change is, needless to say, a grave concern, and we have to address it directly and swiftly. Appreciate the work that was done by the Liberal government in advancing our clean future. But the outstanding concern for me and many people that I've spoken with is that the mineral industry as a whole does not have overarching caps on emissions. So what we're in a situation where the current plan is everybody else has limits and caps, and the mineral industry is allowed to grow at a rate that is not capped. And so I think it's essential that when we're planning, we have to have an equitable playing field because we're all impacted. And I don't think that there should be any special privileges for anyone. I appreciate that there was a fuel tax rebate because there was some stress around that, but that should not continue into the future. But I think the main thing is that there have been, it seems like there's a huge interest by the Liberal government to allow projects to keep coming into the north. And that is not a sustainable way of going forward if we don't have, if we have a clear cap and we have clear guidelines, then we can choose the projects that can meet those caps and meet those emissions. So that's what I have to say mostly. That it's a vision of the territory that we have to make sure everyone who lives here is in agreement and in part of it. No exceptions.
Thank you, Chris. The next one to answer is Sandy.
Thank you very much. So I fundamentally disagree with the NDP's take on this. Introduction of carbon intensity targets for mines and also large industry plants is something that had to be done with the federal government and ourselves. The federal government has finalized its approach to this, and we are now working to make that implemented this year. What happened in the past with the Yukon Party's plan was the only way that they met their targets was when a mine shut down. So without addressing this much more complicated system, then we would be going down the exact same road as previous governments. We don't think that that's the right thing to do. You have to establish carbon intensity targets. This isn't something that the Yukon Liberals are introducing. This is an international conversation. There's some great programs. If we look at models in Quebec, if we look at models in California, British Columbia, we just had to take the time to make sure that we had the right ones and to make sure that a mine coming up or coming down and the carbon emissions from that doesn't augment or change our fundamental goal of the Paris Accord. We've been working for the last 3 years with First Nations, transboundary First Nations, municipalities, and environmentalists to establish a 10-year plan fully costed out at $500 million to address climate change. This is extremely important. It's very concerning that the federal Conservative Party has decided to take climate change off of their platform. I know that the northern component of that process was in agreement with that. So interesting to see where the Yukon Party stands on that. But we have costed out a comprehensive plan. It's a 10-year plan, and we need to take that action, and we will.
Thank you, Sandy. And now Charlie.
I actually believe the Yukon has to be at the forefront of adapting and addressing the issues of climate change. I think one of the main contributors to our fossil fuel emissions within the Klondike area itself is the transportation of goods into our community. I think we're taking a lot of really solid step forwards by building an agricultural industry that can support our communities independently. I would like to work with the Yukon Party and start developing some realistic green energy programming and to build off current programming that liberal government has already had in place. The Yukon Party is committed to freezing power rates for 2 years to help stabilize the Yukon energy budget and restructure the corporation. I think this will play a huge role in kind of relieving that initial stress of these increasing power rates that are now being supplemented by diesel generators, which is another large contributor to fossil fuels emissions in the Yukon. But for the Klondike itself, I think we have to really take a strong approach and try and become more self-sufficient, stop relying on outsourcing goods. I think if we can reduce the traffic on our highways, we will see, they'll see a benefit for everyone. Thank you.
All right. And now we have any follow-up questions or comments. So we'll start with Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, as far as the limits, I think my message is that whatever the climate strategy is that we agree to, we have to agree, there have to be limits. And when we're talking about intensity targets and no sensibility around the number of projects that are allowed to happen, then we're not going to be able to meet our targets. We have to have clear emission standards across the board for the whole territory. And that means that you're not like, if you're doing it project at a time, project at a time, project at a time, it doesn't add up. So I just, oh, here I have my mask on when I'm talking and not when I'm not. Yeah, I think we have to take it seriously again. And yeah, it matters. And as far as renewable energy goes, we need to be investing in that. And the Yukon NDP has a good, solid, clear plan for investing and transitioning away from fossil fuel dependency. And I support your notion there and concur that we need to really develop our industry here in territory so that we're less reliant on outside both fuel and transportation and all the things, and just really draw on our creativity and resourcefulness and work towards being a much more self-sufficient and self-sustaining territory.
And you're done.
Mask on.
Yes. That's tricky. Up and down, up and down.
We're trying our best here.
I think we get
Trying our
better
best.
at
I
it.
know. I'm getting
All
worse
right.
at
So Sandy has 2 minutes follow-up.
Thanks. Yeah, again, with our carbon intensity targets, this is a real plan. This is, again, looking at best practices. I think the federal government has got it right as far as understanding that there's going to need to be different models that apply for different industries, and that will help us immensely. When it comes to renewables, we have great projects with Atlin right now. We're expanding their hydro facility, working with First Nations governments there. We're expanding at Champagne and Ajax with First Nations there. We managed to not borrow, but to fund the largest battery probably in North America coming into for storage as well. We have a whole suite of options for renewable energy. The Yukon Party keeps on talking about our rented diesels. They want to create a long-term plan for fossil fuels by establishing a thermal plant in Whitehorse. That is not the right way to go. Right now, our rented diesels are only for surge. 93% of our power comes from renewables right now, and our plan is to get us to 97%. It is good to see that the Yukon Party is now sponsoring a carbon pricing mechanism. They called it a scheme for years, and now they're committing to one. Last election was all about how if we go in this direction, then everything's gonna be so expensive that everybody's gonna have to leave the territory. Freezing power rates, the Yukon Party has done this before. They said we're gonna borrow money and we're gonna pay it back in 2 years. They did not. They froze rates at that time. Somebody has to pay for this, and that's what's happening now. If they freeze rates again, they will still need someone needs to pay for that. You can't just freeze rates. You hold on to that rate now, it's going to come up and bite somebody later on. So I'd like to see their plan of how they freeze rates and still borrowing money for diesel, LNG, or whatever fossil fuels that they're going to invest long-term in.
All right, thank you. Okay, so moving right along, we're just about at 7:30. So we are finishing up the last two questions, and we have a couple of more questions. If we decide, if we are able to move on to those questions, they are going to be a little bit easier questions because you haven't had the opportunity to have the questions sent to you ahead of time. So I just wanted to let you know that there is a couple of questions after this if we have time. All right, so we're on question 11. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing Robert Service School? How will your government ensure that Robert Service School has the space and resources it needs to support both students and staff? And we start this question with Sandy.
I want to start off by apologizing to the school community with the way that the $4 million solution to the portables was conveyed. What I heard from the school community was that the government basically said you have two options or nothing. And that's just not the way that we need to be communicating. So I apologize for that. What should be said is great news. We have $4 million for permanent solution to portables for classrooms. What we also need to say, and we'll do this right away if reelected, is what the bigger plan is for Robert Service School, which is busting at its seams. We have to talk to the library committee. There's an agreement that any plans for the Robert Service School has to involve them. We have to talk with the cultural spacing for Tr'ondëk Hwëch'in. There's lots of conversations about the library, but you can't come up and just talk about one solution without showing the bigger picture of how we're going to expand Robert Service School. So that's one thing I want to commit to immediately upon re-election, if I get that honor. We definitely do need to do a better job in communicating, and we will. This is extremely important. Again, concerns over losing FTEs and the way that we do a 5-year rolling average to predict. I think that there's more that we can do with how we treat some of the bigger schools like in Watson Lake and in Dawson City when it comes to ensuring that we're maintaining K-12 programming in rural communities that's as good as Whitehorse. We need to do more to work with the Chiefs Council on Education. We have done a lot of work there already. We've put money into the Education Directorate, First Nations Education Directorate. They've done some amazing work already. And so same with the Chiefs Council. We will have the first First Nations school board, which is extremely important as well. Again, my commitment, if I do get the honor of serving into a third term, is I'll be much more present in the school community, the school community that I love.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah, thank you.
Your 2 minutes are out. And now we will move on to Charlie.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue facing RSS is, like Sandy said, it is bursting at the seams, and it's quite apparent throughout this community that we are running out of space for everything, whether that be housing, childcare, or classrooms. We need to start looking at long-term solutions It's encouraging to hear that there is money being set aside for a realistic solution for the portables, but we were also promised a daycare in the last election and that didn't go through. So I'd like to see some action before we start jumping on promises. As a community, we need to ensure that our children are meeting expected outcomes for their grades. Talking with the education community here, it's my interpretation is that we are having a lot of students being kind of pushed through without the proper skills to affiliate their age. I think it's going to have to take a community to really work together to resolve these issues in our community and in our school. And just as our Education Act is titled, Partners in Education, we need to be partners in education and work with First Nations, work with the teachers, work with the students, and work with the community to really try and solve the issues that our school is facing. Thank you.
All right. And now, Chris, you have your 2 minutes.
Thanks. Yeah, certainly the biggest challenges that I've heard facing the school, obviously they're busting at the seams, they're overcrowded, and they're under-resourced, and that makes for a very stressful learning environment. And I think teachers are doing their best and working really hard to meet students' needs, but the number of students has increased and the number of supports and resources and space has not. So it's time we need to invest in schools more and not less. So I think we all agree on that. So when we're looking at new capital projects, it's something, yeah, we just need to do better for students. And I think that just means resources. It means it means training, and it just means making those things available so that the pressure is off and kids can learn and they can grow in a healthy way in the classroom.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 2 minutes for follow-up, and it's Sandy's turn.
Yeah, I think, as far as the capital builds as well, for the first time, the Department of Education is forecasting building and renovations and expansions of schools. There hasn't been a new elementary school built in Whitehorse in decades. There was never a coordinated effort between the Department of Education and the Department of Highways and Public Works to coordinate efforts when it comes to a longer plan. And so a lot of movements has been done on that. And we need to turn our attention to Robert Service School immediately. Again, it's not good enough to just come up and say, great news, we do have $4 million. I mean, that's great that we're going to have a permanent solution to those portables, but without the school community knowing how that's going to affect the bigger build out of a school, it's really hard for the principal and the administrators and the school council and the teachers to really be able to wrap their heads around if this is a proper design or how it's going to affect the bigger picture. So again, the good news is there is money in the budget. I've talked with the Department of Highways and Public Works, and again, if we have the opportunity of continuing in this role, immediately we'll re-engage with the school community to not only show not only to work with them as far as what we can build for those 4 classrooms for a permanent solution to those portables, but also that bigger community plan. It's extremely important. Again, the reason I got out of the classroom to begin with was, we went through 3 different 5-year plans in 3 different years from the Yukon Party government, and it was plan after plan after plan without actually committing. And so I will definitely be in the community this summer, this spring, working with the school community to formulate some of these plans and to talk about the planning for the FTEs and maybe there's a better system we can work on there.
Great, thank you. And then we have Charlie for any follow-up.
Yeah, having spoken with a lot of educators in the community, again, a lot of issues are stemming from lack of communication with current government. A good example of this is this pre-kindergarten rollout, which was kind of seen to be, sprung during the pandemic, mid-breakout, and just everyone didn't really have time to sit down and think about it, and then just being forcibly implemented in communities before Whitehorse doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I would just like to really encourage whatever government does end up taking or winning the election in the Klondike, that they open strong communication between all levels of government and all levels of education. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then we have Chris for follow-up.
Yeah, I just want to concur with you, Charlie, there, and just the need to be so respectful to community and community members when it comes to any changes or any proposed changes. That was definitely sidestepped on a number of accounts, especially like in the months leading up to the election. And I understand that you might have had a huge amount of pressure, but we don't need that kind of pressure. We need to be working together, and we need to be listening to each other and collaborating and taking guidance from the community on what we need to go forward. Surprise announcements are not the way to go. It's not respectful. First Nation government wasn't consulted either on the movement of 4-year-olds to the school. I mean, it was just running a train into what is already a very, very busy station. So yeah, I concur that we need to be respectful and communicative and take the time we need to take when big decisions are being proposed. And I'm committed to doing that.
All right, thank you. We are on our last question, number 12. I just want to remind everyone that we will be finishing up the questions at about 10 to 8, and then we'll have time for closing remarks. All right. So our last question is question 12. Rural Yukoners, like those in the Klondike, often have to travel to access necessary medical treatment such as labor and delivery, fertility treatment, dental emergencies, surgeries, and cancer treatment. What would you do as MLA to meet more of Dawson's healthcare needs in the community, and how will you support patients seeking treatment outside of the community or the territory? And we start this question with Charlie.
This is a really interesting question. From my, quick experience in the campaign trail, door knocking, you constantly hear people having to travel for specialized medical care that was previously offered in the communities. And it occurred to me that the centralization of the Yukon is occurring at a very rapid pace. If I were to get elected to MLA of the Klondike, I would fight to bring back these services to our community. A good example of that is dentistry. We have a massive lack for dentistry, or a massive need for dentistry, in our community. There's been many stories of people saying they're going down, traveling to Whitehorse, taking 3 days off work. You're losing your labor, you're paying gas, you're paying hotels, and then in some instances, not even be able to be seen by a dentist. And I don't think that's right at all. I think it's a fundamental right to be able to have available healthcare no matter where you live in the Yukon. So I would really, really like to push with the Yukon Party to review the dentistry contract and encourage more special medical services to start coming back to our communities. Thank you.
Right, next to answer is Chris.
Oh, I happen to have my mask off. Yes, it is. Yeah, the thing that one of the many things I was really inspired by the NDP platform when I got into it is just that real commitment to viewing any decisions with a community lens. So I think it's, Whitehorse is so revolves so intensely around itself, but there is such expense and stress and cost. Well, expense is cost for people living in communities to access services. And that includes, yes, dental and physio and occupational therapists and fertility and all variety of services. And it used to be the case that those services traveled much more fluidly through the communities. And so I'd like to also would be advocating for a return to that kind of service. Traveling supports coming to the community, so we don't have to, it's a cost saving in the long run, no doubt about it. And I just wanted to, take a moment to acknowledge that the NDP government is committed to recognizing that dental health is part of our physical health. Health doesn't stop at your neck, and are committed to including dental coverage in the universal healthcare plan for everyone in the territory. And really this just applies to likely a small section of people who don't have that kind of coverage through their employment plans. So yeah, I just, we need to be applying, I think I've answered the question. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thanks. All right, Sandy.
Thanks, Georgette. First and foremost, we've been working extremely hard since 2018 on the independent review that put forth Putting People First plan. This is a people-centric plan. It's going away from what we've seen in the past, which was acute care, and moving to a more collaborative care model. In the last few years, we've doubled the amount of money for rural, for the medical travel subsidy. We now have mandatory Indigenous culture, safety, and humility training. We've actually increased the budget for the Yukon Hospital Corporation by 27% in the last 3 years. We've matched the CPNP federal funding, which took a long time, and I've been trying to do that for a long time. We're putting aging in place strategies for all rural communities. You know, there's a lot of work that we've been doing. One Health is also another system that we put in. It's modernizing the digital systems of the health community. You know, Meditech was around for 30 years. Previous government didn't touch it. If we didn't change that system, our ability to trace COVID would have been deplorable. I can only imagine where we would have been if we didn't front-end load the investment that we did in One Health when it pertained to COVID and being able to trace the virus as it went through some of these cases. The folks at YCDC did a fantastic job with this implementation. When it comes to the trials and tribulations of dentistry in Dawson, I have a lot more to say about that. We are working with the city right now. The city made me aware of an individual from Fort Nelson that wants to take a look at the contract that we do have out. Remember, COVID stopped dentistry programs right across Canada for a while, but when we get to our 2 minutes, I'll expand on what I see for dentistry here in Dawson and also with the itinerant program as well.
Great, thank you. So we have follow-up questions for 2 minutes. So Charlie, your turn.
I don't have any follow-up, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, now Chris.
Yes, I'm losing steam. I do feel you're such a seasoned hand. You could just go all night, right? I certainly appreciate like all the work that goes into this. I mean, it really is like an incredible responsibility. And a lot of irons are in the fire, and we try to, you've done the best that you can, for sure. There's been a lot of planning that have gone on, and I commend your efforts in that regard. And whatever is already in place and that is happening in a good way would never, like if the NDP forms the next government, which I'm hopeful for other reasons, would certainly respect whatever direction is already going in a good way and honor the work that's been done. Yeah, I didn't have any more to add to my health question, but I wanted to say that.
Thank you. Okay, Sandy, you have your 2 minutes follow-up.
Thanks, Georgette, and thanks for that, Chris. And I want to thank both of you as well. I don't think a lot of people understand how hard it is to put your name forward, just to put your name forward. I can only imagine the first time you saw both your names on a sign, how that feels. It takes a lot of courage to put your name out there. So thank you to both of you for doing that. I really do appreciate that. The dentistry thing has been a struggle, and I've been banging my head against the wall on it. We did put a tender out specifically for Dawson. We have a chair in the hospital, and that tender languished for too long. The itinerant dentist program, Dr. W, who was going around, his contract ended. And then COVID did hit as well. And so that, of course, dentist program is being canceled. But we do have a person right now in Fort Nelson. Him and his mentor are considering coming up. I have the government looking at how can we coordinate so that we have a permanent position here in Dawson for half of the month, where that person could also maybe apply for the other contract that's out right now for the itinerant dentist that goes into all the other rural communities as well. So Now, all of this came to me from, and I'm going to give credit to the city of Dawson. This individual reached out to Dawson, and it was the municipality that reached out to me. So hopefully we can turn the page on the dentistry issue and provide that service here with the contract. Again, 2 tenders that are out there right now that well, before COVID, and we will try to do some kind of amalgamation of those, pardon the dentistry pun, and but we'll see what we can do with that. But hope is hopefully on the way.
Great. Well, you got done before we ended. All right, so that concludes our 12 questions that we had prior to coming online and talking live about it. And I really appreciate that whoever's out there is still sticking with us. We're almost done. And but we do have, well, we're kind of running a little bit short. It's a little bit tight, but so maybe I'll ask one quick question up here, and then you can answer the other questions maybe through your Facebook feed or through emails or through conversations.
Sure.
So it should be fairly straightforward. I won't have any follow-up for it, and so it'll just be 2 minutes, okay? So the question is, I'm just choosing one of the 3 questions. And so the question is, if you were elected MLA for the Klondike, what issue would be your priority and why? So we'll start, we finished with Charlie last time, we'll start with Chris.
Oh, okay. Yes, so many to choose from. No, I feel pretty strongly of the need to advance successor legislation. I know it's not an immediate need in terms of, like, all the other things will also happen, but I feel so strongly about the need for that to be actioned immediately. It is the guiding force, and that will, it has caused, I feel like the inaction on creating successor legislation has created so much tension in our community, and I do not feel like we can sustain it any longer. It is it's creating distrust and division, and we need a clear, guiding, modernized legislation in the mineral sector to guide us forward in a responsible and give us guidance on what is responsible mining. So for me, that is the main thing going forward. And also, again, ensuring that industry is included in the climate plan. We cannot have a climate plan that doesn't have limits. We have to be meeting targets, and that means that the whole system of regulatory approval process has to be carried within that. We can't have, you know, projects being approved here and there. We have to have one unifying vision as to what each project is going to contribute to greenhouse gas, and we have to select those projects based on how they are best going to serve the community. So what is the balance? We have to take a really serious look at what the benefits and what the inputs are to those. What are the public monies for regulatory review and enforcement and compliance and reclamation and roads, and what are the losses? What are the losses? What are the losses to?
All right, thank you for finishing. You can have a
Losses to
chance to
land. Yes,
share more in your closing remarks.
Thanks.
So we have Sandy next.
I think, you know, I've had the honor and privilege of being in this role for 9.5 years now. And, you know, in the last 4.5 years, we've done a lot of work to, like I said in my opening statements, break down the silos, and we've done a lot, and we're no longer rookies. And, you know, my number one commitment, the thing I want to work on the most, is being more present here in Dawson. This is my home. You know, it's been a lot in 10 years. I lost both my parents during this time, and there's really nothing for me anywhere else, I guess would be the way of saying that. This is my family here. This is my home. And yeah, I think that's the one thing that I want to do more, is make sure that I'm present. And I know that we can help solve a lot of the issues. And a lot of the issues we're having is because we're doing well here as a society. We have the lowest unemployment rate in Canada for 4.5 years. We have great forecasts of GDP. Even during the COVID, when businesses were struggling, we still had retail sales that were better than last year. You know, this is a good place to live. People want to live here in the Yukon. People want to live here in Dawson. And that's a lot of the pressures. COVID brings a lot of mental health pressures pressures as well. We need the Klondike MLA to spend more time in this riding, coordinating governments, working with governments, working with the private sector, and that's my commitment. There's nowhere else I would rather be than here, and that would be my next 4 years of commitment to the Klondike, is to be more present.
All right, thank you. And last we have Charlie.
I would really like to focus on growing this community as a whole and in all regards. I truly believe that we are experiencing growth that we just can't sustain. We need to improve on our housing. We need to make available lots. And if that means, you know, upsetting a couple people who hold industrial rights to some property, then that's so be it. But I truly believe as a community to progress forward, we have to start expanding. And that'd be my main goal as MLA of the Klondike. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're almost to the end. We are just going to finish up with some closing remarks, and everybody will have an opportunity. Should I shorten it just a bit, like 2 minutes each, for any closing remarks that you want to share? So we finished off with, I lost track now already. I'm near the end too. Maybe we'll start. I had Chris, Charlie. No, Chris.
I went first.
Chris,
last time.
Sandy. Okay. All right. Thank you. We're near the end, so I didn't have it written down. Okay, Sandy. You can share your closing remarks.
Okay, thanks, Georgette. I want to thank everybody for putting on this tonight. You know, there was a point where we weren't going to have a debate, and Frederick and Alex and Georgette and others all stepped up, and the radio station. Thank you very, very, very much for having this debate. I think it's really important for Yukoners to hear us and Dawsonites to hear all the candidates. Thanks for a respectful debate as well to my colleagues here. Yeah, I think for myself, you know, closing comments, I think we said it all about all the different things going on in the Klondike right now. I think this is an extremely important job. It's a hard job to do. It takes every single waking hour of your life, and it's a lot of work, and it's the most rewarding work that you'll ever do, because you get an opportunity to speak to so many amazing people in your community. We've done a lot of work to keep you safe in COVID. We need consistency as we go from relief to recovery. There's so much work to be done immediately. The weather's getting nice. I know that there's still variants happening throughout the country, which are extremely concerning. But as other jurisdictions catch up to the Yukon as far as our vaccination rates, as we look at some amazing new technologies in testing, now is not the time to change governments. Now is not the time to change horses. We need to continue to move for our economy's sake, for our safety's sake. And if you give me the privilege of continuing this role, I will continue to work very, very hard. And I just want to end by thanking Klondikers for giving me this opportunity in the last 2 elections. It has been the experience of my lifetime, and I thank you for allowing me to have this privilege.
Okay. And now we will have Charlie for his closing remarks.
I would like to really thank everyone who worked so hard to put this forum together. This has been a pretty amazing experience for myself. It's probably not something I ever imagined myself doing, but it's been amazing. For me, I think there's been a lot of big party politics being talked here, a lot of Yukon generalized stuff. This riding is super special, and the people here are super special. I believe whoever, you know, does end up representing us in our community should put the people of the Klondike's issues first. I truly hope that someone could be me. I believe I can work really hard and listen to all members of the community throughout the Klondike. Thank you.
All right. And Chris, your closing remarks.
Thank you. And thank you all as well for all your work and contribution to the community. I guess what I didn't say at the top was that the principal reason why I chose to stand is because of the leadership that I feel in Kate White. And she's served in the legislature for 10 years and has really got a really good and talked to like so many people in markets and doorsteps and boardrooms, and has really, I think, evolved a very clear sense of the way that we need to move forward. And that way is really putting Yukoners first, and it's putting the health and interests of the people who live here first. And I think she genuinely has a clear vision, and I myself would be so honored to serve with her. For myself, I don't feel like I'm a leader in the community, I'm a worker. And anything that I've ever done in this community to contribute has all come from some public process, whether it was a community climate action plan or the Kanacha School Survivors Group or the TRC calls for action. It's all come from somewhere. So I take direction, I'm responsive, and I would be so honored to work to advance the interests and the vision of the community at a legislative level. And also just feel very strongly that we need to be looking forward in a very serious way. And we have to prepare for what is an unknown future and ensure that at the very basis, we have to take care of the land and the water and the animals for future generations. There's just no getting beside that. And we can't let talk of economic development and growth and wealth generation overtake that. We have responsibilities and we have to fulfill them.
Thank you, Chris. That concludes our candidates forum for this evening. I really thank you for being here, and I really want to thank the viewers that are out there and all the people present here this evening to hear all the different types of topics and discussion that we've had tonight. So this wraps up our program for this evening. I want to thank again the candidates for taking the time to be here with us this evening and really hearing from you. And hopefully this will spark more questions, more discussion about issues in our Klondike region, because it is, in fact, the largest electoral region in the territorial election. So I just wanted to mention that little interesting fact. So we've got a lot of representation here, and let's keep it going, keeping it positive, keeping this community strong, and really talking about the issues that really relate to what we need in this community. To our listeners out there, please remember that the returning office in Dawson is at the St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church Hall on 5th Avenue and King Street, and is open every day up to and including the election day, April 12th. You can get information you need to vote at your local returning office or by contacting Elections Yukon. I want to thank CFYT for helping to organize tonight's broadcast, and I want to thank you to our listeners out there for tuning in this evening. We hope that this will be available as a recording, right? Yes. So please be aware that you can always listen to this forum again in a recorded manner on Facebook or through Zoom. So thank you. My name is Georgette McLeod, and I want to wish you all a wonderful Easter weekend. Masi.
Joe.
Forgot to say that Kate's in town tomorrow from noon till 2 at the Dike. I meant to plug that.
I think we can all agree that if Georgette ran, we'd all vote for her.
Oh, yeah.